Okay, this is the Arborist call for the 28th of November. We're going to start off with core team updates. We don't have anybody here from ECC, so it'll just be Zcash Foundation. And then we'll have some research implementation updates. And today it's just going to be Frost and the network sustainability mechanism. Then if anybody wants to make any announcements or have a discussion, we'll have time for that at the end. Arborist calls are bi-weekly calls where people who contribute to the Zcash protocol can come together to coordinate, discuss timelines and what's going to be included in network upgrades, and identify blockers and try and resolve issues. The idea behind these calls is to make core Zcash protocol development more accessible for a broader set of the Zcash ecosystem and to provide more transparency into how the Zcash sausage is made. Anyone can participate. They can just point their browser at zcasharborist.org. And if you want to present something or suggest a topic for discussion, just drop us an email at arboristcall@zfnd.org and let us know. Other ways you can get involved are by applying for a Zcash community grant. You can also join discussion on the Zcash R&D Discord, which is where most of the Zcash core developers hang out. And there's the ever exciting and fun Zcash community forum. And you can find these links by pointing your browser at zcasharborist.org. So I don't think there's really any more updates on NU6. Everything seems to go well, although there are a few exchanges and wallets and block explorers that I think are still not up to date. I noticed that Poloniex has disabled Zcash deposits for a while, but hopefully we'll start to see people catching up with these upgrades. Anybody want to comment on that? Okay. Moving on to Zcash Foundation, and I think Arya is providing the update today.
Yep, thank you, Dodger. So in Zebra, since the last Arborist call, we've merged PRs that fix several CI issues, add a test to CI that runs on release PRs to confirm that there are no crates being pulled in from Git sources, which happened for the 2.0.0 release. Added a get block header RPC method, updated the minimum protocol version that Zebra expects from its peers during its initial sync, and finally merged the PR for verifying transactions in the mempool that spend unmined outputs of other transactions in the mempool so that text transactions will work as expected in Zebra. We are currently reviewing PRs that update the getBlock RPC method to more closely match the Zcash getBlock output, adding the create raw transaction RPC method, updating the get raw transaction RPC method to more closely match the Zcash method, and generally improving Zebra's RPC error construction so that it's easier to update other methods to more closely match their Zcash analogs later. Waiting until transactions submitted to Zebra via the send raw transaction RPC pass a couple final checks and are added into the mempool before returning a success response, replacing the deprecated JSON RPC crate from parity with the new JSON RPC with an SEE. And then this will allow us possibly to move the one indexer RPC method to Zebra's regular RPC endpoint, as the new crate supports HTTP2 and server-sent events. There's also PRs open for skipping semantic verification of transactions and blocks that are already in the mempool, tracking the spending transaction IDs by spent out points and revealed nullifiers, adding a NIX flake, and fixing the last few bugs in our tests that were revealed recently when we fixed some other CI issues. We've also added ZSA issued asset states to Zebra state in Kedit's fork of Zebra, and are adding an RPC method for querying the issued asset states as well. And I think that's all.
Thank you, Arya. Any questions from anybody? Okay, let's move on then. We can skip ECC as there's nobody here. And I guess there's not much to report on the Zcash deprecation front. So let's move on to research implementation updates, and let's hear about any progress on Crosslink.
can do that. The Crosslink GitHub, which you can find in the Shielded Labs repository, has scoping.md document, which now has the rationale and user experience goals and deployment goals updated. And then we're building more steps tied back to those goals in the form of GitHub tickets, which you can explore and give feedback and help. That's the status of Crosslink. And we're hiring, but that's Jason's bailiwick.
Yeah, the only thing I would add to that is that, you know, basically we're working on creating a roadmap as well that will be published for the community, you know, and link to those GitHub tickets and tie back to the scope.
Oh, right. Yeah, those GitHub tickets I was mentioning are the roadmap currently. There's no other document to see the roadmap such as it is currently half built. Look into the GitHub tickets, which are linked from the scoping.md doc.
Cool. And what sort of person are you looking to hire, Jason?
We're looking for a mid to senior level Rust engineer. We're actually looking for two. And we've been having like consistent interviews. We originally posted to cryptocurrencyjobs.com, but the quality wasn't that good. So I started using a recruiter based out of the UK. And there's a number of candidates, but we sort of are looking for somebody who is the right fit. So we've been making progress. You know, people have been getting through to second and third rounds. But, you know, we still are assessing our options.
Somebody who's a good Rust engineer and who loves Zcash.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, if that's you watching on YouTube, feel free to reach out to Jason on the forums. Okay. Any questions from anybody about Crosslink? Alfredo.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it will worth it, but did you guys consider writing a specification kind of in TLA plus or something like that? I'm not sure if you are familiar with TLA plus, which is kind of a language to write the specifications for distributed systems.
I know about the language. We haven't talked about that specifically, but it's not a bad idea. Do you want to post some kind of a GitHub issue that says that so that Nate can look at it when he gets back from Thanksgiving?
Yeah. Okay. Cool. I can do that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Cool. Any other questions? Okay. Nobody here from Kerit, so we'll move on to Frost and hear from Conrado.
Yep. So we've been working on finishing up the Frost server. We added private key authentication. Basically, we realized that we have like username and password. We have to register the server and share username with other participants. But then we realized that since we already require each participant to generate a key pair to encrypt and authenticate communications between participants, then we could use this key pair to also authenticate with the server. So implemented that, and now the server doesn't need the database, which is good. And we removed the old username and password feature. So this is being reviewed, but should get merged soon. And yeah, we're progressing with other stuff like allowing running the DKG using the Frost server. And we keep working on that.
Cool. So does that make the server effectively stateless?
Yes, which is good.
Cool. Good, but I guess there's a small risk of a sort of denial of service type attack.
Yeah, we need to make this server more robust against those attacks, like having timeouts, stuff like that. We might want to like store like session state in a database. Like if you need to reboot the server, then everyone who's running a session will lose the session. So we might get to store sessions in a database, but I think that we can do that in a later phase of after we release the first version of the server.
Cool. Any questions for Conrado? Okay, let's move on, and we'll hear from Jason on the network sustainability mechanism.
Yeah, so the major update since the last Arborist call is that we've started polling the community to gauge sentiment on the NSM. We decided to present all 3 zips as a package and ask participants if they support the NSM being included in NU7. So far, the results back. So far, we have the results back from the ZecHub poll, which consisted of 20 active community members, and they unanimously supported the NSM being included in NU7. There's also a poll that went out to ecosystem engineers and included folks like core dev teams from ECC, ZF, Shielded Labs, and also community developers from organizations like Zingo, Kedit, and ChainSafe, because they closely follow Zcash. And we expect to have those results by early next week. And then we're organizing a coin holder pool, which there's currently a registration window for to give people the opportunity to move their ZEC into Orchard in order to participate. But the actual polling will take place next week after the registration window closes. I spoke to Dodger and Josh over the past week, and it sounds like both intend to circulate ZCAP and ZAC polls to the community. Shielded Labs has put together a web page at shieldedlabs.net/NSM that we'd request that they include in the poll or supporting materials so that the community understands, what it is and why we think it's important. And then if you guys are open to it, we'd like to work with you on phrasing the questions so that they're presented to the community in a way that, accurately represents the NSM. And then lastly, we're waiting for the zip editors to come back on next steps. So last week, Conrado wrote on the forum that the zip editors are preparing a post with feedback on whether each zip is feasible, safe, and useful, which he said would be posted at some point next week. So we've just been waiting to see that update. And then lastly this time, Dara Emma brought up some concerns on Discord about the usefulness of ZIP 235, specifically that burning 60% of transaction fees don't account enough to justify the consensus change. I reiterated that we acknowledge that the fees are small and that it's always been our intention to implement a modern version of the NSM to introduce its basic functionality. And then, we have every intention on adding other fee mechanisms in the future. And then I also reiterated that if consensus from the core engineers is that burning such a small portion of fees isn't worth a consensus level change, then we're open to testing the mechanism with a node software update first.
So
That's it.
just to add some context to why, or the discussions that were happening when the zip editors came up with the document that said the usefulness doesn't justify the complexity. NU7 is already going to be a really, really big update, so there's concern about too much complexity from that point of view. But also, ZIP 233 was discussed as possibly being used for ZSA issuance, where we want to charge larger fees for creating new assets because it uses up a row in the database. And we've also been discussing a update zip to 317, where by a standard rule, nodes would reject mempool transactions that do not burn a certain amount of funds. So zip 235 seems less useful by comparison to taking that route, especially because that work could be done after NU7 has already been deployed. So just something to consider there.
So what is, just going back to ZIP 233, is that going to come across as a recommendation from the zip editors to include in NU7? Because there's some synergy there between ZSAs and, what we envision the NSM to be. Right, because like the burning mechanism in and of itself isn't the NSM. The NSM is really the full package. It's the ability to burn and then recirculate into future block rewards. But if we can get zip 233 in, I think that's a good, compromise for NU7 given the complexity budget.
So in tentative discussions, I'm not sure if it's been posted yet, but it sounds like 233 is easy to get in and very useful because we can add those standard rules later. So I think the zip editors are going to, if they haven't already, recommend that that be included. 234 is a little bit more complicated in terms of ecosystem updates. But if Shielded Labs is willing to commit to doing that work, and if the community agrees that issuance smoothing is something that we want, then I think so far in discussions, it seems like the zip editors are happy to recommend that as well. It's just 235 that doesn't seem to justify the complexity because adding a standard rule after NU7 is deployed seems easier, more useful, and yeah.
Okay, no, that's fair. That's good. It doesn't look like it's been posted to the forum yet, but it does sound like, based on what you're saying, it will be shortly.
I think it will be. So take everything I've said with a grain of salt because there may still be changes and further discussions and review.
Understood. Thank you for that update.
And Jason, just to be clear, when you talk about polling these various groups, you're presenting the NSM as a full package. You're not asking them whether they agree with just enabling zip 233.
Yeah,
You're just saying, do you support the NSM?
correct, because the idea there is that if you support the NSM, then you're probably okay with zip 233 going in, especially since it's not contentious from our side, it's not contentious from the core engineering side. It just seems like it's something that it seems like a nice compromise given the complexity budget and some of the potential sensitivities around zip 234. And there's also a concern with presenting 233 as the NSM when it's not, like I said in my earlier comment, it's not really the NSM by itself.
It's not, but it is a component of it that then provides that mechanism for storing those funds for future use.
Well, not really storing. It's just burning. At that point, you're just burning, right?
Yeah, as I've said in the past, I don't think that's good terminology, but because the intention is to reissue those funds at some point in the future, correct?
Yes, if something like zip 234 is implemented. It's
But
a
they
necessary
could,
condition, right?
but zip 234 wouldn't be the only way. I mean, one way you can think of uh, uh, network sustainability mechanism is it's just a different style of lockbox. There could be
Yeah.
a future network upgrade that issues funds that have been burnt per zip 233, but using a different mechanism.
I'll have to think about that. I think there might be some differences, but yeah, I guess it sort of. I don't recall exactly how the lockbox works. Like the
Well,
how are
at the
how are the
moment,
funds taken out of circulation or reserved for the dev fund?
so in well, actually, I'll let someone who actually knows the answer that. I think Alfredo was first.
Yeah, I don't know the details, but I think that the main difference is that the asset is getting from the fee instead of being created in the block like the logbox. The logbox is more similar to a dev fund. But yeah, they are stored somewhere, and there's going to be a new zip to actually take them out from there. In any case.
Zuko?
Um, a big difference between the whole concept of the lockbox and the whole concept of zip234 is, like Chris Goes posted recently, Chris Goes from Anoma posted recently. What's important to him and to me about zip234 is that it's very neutral. There's no discretion. You don't have to wonder when or if the devs will decide to do a thing. It's like a purely permissionless automatic process like Bitcoin. So if Zcash doesn't merge and activate zip234 now, then there remains questions in people's minds like, will they do it next year, or will they change their minds, or whatever? But once it's merged and activated, it's kind of just like baked in, and there's no discretion that any party has over what will happen with those funds going forward.
Okay, Arya?
In terms of how the lockbox will be distributed, I think the answer is really we just don't know yet. There's no way to distribute it yet. There have been some discussions about using multi-sig or Frost to have multiple parties participate in sending funds over. But it is like the lockbox zip in that if we don't get zip234 into this network upgrade, we still will have to get into a future network upgrade because zip233 doesn't really make any sense without it, or with some form of reissuing the funds that have been unissued or burned.
Yeah. Any other questions or comments on this? Okay, well, I guess we'll wait for the recommendation from the zip editors, and also results of polls. We'll be polling Zcap as well, but I think we'll be giving them more of a menu to choose from rather than just an all or nothing, because I think that's kind of a false choice, really. Okay. Any announcements that anybody wants to share? And finally, any topics that anyone wants to discuss? If not, we can wrap it up nice and early and let the Americans get back to their turkey.
Thank you.
Happy Thanksgiving, everyone. Be grateful today if you feel like it.
Right, thank you, everybody, and see you again in 2 weeks in the earlier time slot.
Sounds good. Take care, everybody.
Great.
See you.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Bye.